The Software Leaders Uncensored podcast, where tech leaders grow beyond the code.
You're listening to Software Leaders Uncensored, the raw, real talk podcast for tech execs who are tired of buzzwords and BS. I'm Steve Taplin, CEO, author, and currently writing my second book about what I've learned from building over 30 ventures, facing 20 failures, and having 10 wins. I've taken companies public, franchised companies nationwide, and raised tens of millions of dollars. The common thread with all of my companies, the secret sauce, was custom software behind every success. Now, through my company Sonatify, I help tech leaders scale smarter with elite nearshore engineers who move fast and deliver. Each episode, I sit down with real tech leaders to unpack what's working, what's broken, and how to build what actually matters. No theory, no fluff. Let's dive in. Today, I'm very honored to have Brian O'Neill here with me on the show. Brian has been an experienced software engineer, a software architect, a CTO, an advisor, a co-founder. He's done it all. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. And
You
yeah, 10 wins. That's pretty good. It's not bad.
You know, at first I'm like 30, 20, 10. That 20 sounds bad, but then I'm like, wait a minute. If I was in baseball, that would be a 333 batting average, and that might get me in the Hall of Fame.
Excellent. Well done.
Well, in 1 to 2 minutes here, walk all our listeners through the journey of your career and, what you've been doing.
Sure. Yeah, just real quick. You can tell I'm old. I got the gray beard. So I go back to 300 baud modems where you actually had to put the phone on the coupler.
Unfortunately, I'm right with you there, Brian.
Bulletin board systems, got my start in the old days. But graduated from Brown, 99. Went out to Silicon Valley, did the boom to bust ride out there. Came back to Philly. I'm a Philly native, and I've been doing startups and mid-sized companies ever since in the Philly area. Spent most of my time between health tech and MarTech ad tech. A couple wins, I have a few. One, I was CTO at a company called Health Market Science. We did all sorts of data science stuff on medical claims information. We could identify like the most influential doctor. We sold that one to LexisNexis. After that, CTO at a company called Monetate. We did personalization. So as the page renders, decides what images to put on the screen, product recommendations, all that. There, I think we influenced a third of the dollars spent on Black Friday one year, which was amazing. So billions of page views, all the largest e-coms. Sold that one to private equity. So sold that to Vista. And now I'm doing another one. Proof Pilot.
Awesome. Well, so you're currently at Proof Pilot, which is an end-to-end clinical experience platform. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my team, we've been together, I guess this is our third or fourth company together. We were doing customer engagement in e-commerce. So what we saw is an opportunity to translate that to patient engagement in clinical trials. So keep patients engaged, keep them conforming and compliant to the protocol. So you have a successful trial. So the platform itself has basically 5 different aspects to it. We have a portal for the pharmaceutical company itself, and that's where they can see dashboards and business intelligence. How's the trial going? We have a portal for the site. It's called a site, but that's the healthcare provider. So those are the ones running the trial itself. So the doctors are logging in or the nurses are logging in, seeing what they have to do for the patient that's about to come in. We have a patient portal. So that's where the patient logs in, sees their to-do list, can schedule a visit, all of that stuff. And then we have a recruitment portal, which is where it's a public site where we're trying to recruit patients for the trial itself. So we ingest the protocol, which is like this 300-page PDF of what has to happen throughout the trial. And these trials last for years. And then we orchestrate that entire work.
Well, and we do a lot of work in healthcare and life sciences as well. And if there's any space that needs significant disruption and better use of technology. But before we talk about this, I always like to, CTO is a very tough position in the marketplace. Some would even call it an impossible position. You have to build great products. You have to keep non-technical executives and investors and board members in line with real expectations. And I really like what you said earlier. You've been through multiple companies where you've had exits, but your current core executive team has stayed together and you guys formed this company?
Yeah. So the executive team, we all are 1 degree of separation. So we've all worked near each other. But the engineering team is actually the one that stayed together. Okay. So yeah. So
well,
we've figured out how to work together, and I like working with the best. Everybody else likes working with the best. So it's been a great team.
What a way to propel success there very quickly, and by having that engineering team. So that's That's phenomenal. Certainly in the healthcare space, that you're
Yeah.
dealing with HIPAA regulations, you're dealing with, and then depending on other areas you touch, you have all these types of regulations.
Yeah, we're actually FDA regulated, so it's actually
Okay,
even
so
worse than HIPAA.
you're down to device level stuff with FDA
Yeah,
regulation as
GXP,
well.
it's called good clinical practices is what you need to conform to, and it's a nightmare. Absolute nightmare.
Well, and clinical trials are notorious for being inefficient, for being complex. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you've seen about digitizing this process and making it more efficient?
Yeah, so it's a tech problem that also has a people problem because all of these sites, right, these are doctors and nurses trying to participate, right? And when you think about it, they're running maybe 20 trials at a time, and each one of those trials has a different 10 tech vendors. So if you think about it, their life is managing their workflow across 200 technologies, right?
And they don't understand tech very well usually.
Right, exactly. So it's the simple stuff, honestly. I mean, they're used to doing stuff still on paper. So anything with the browser is better. But I literally just got off a call with one of the major SSO providers to figure out how we can just simplify their login process and do deep linking across these different technologies. But that requires coordinating sometimes with our competitors so that we can improve the end user experience for the doctor, the healthcare provider.
So
Simple stuff.
always lots of challenges to solve in that space. You mentioned prior to the show that you guys are focused on how to integrate AI in clinical trials. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's tons of opportunity, as you can imagine, to get AI in there, but you have to balance it with the regulations. One of the products that we just put together and are delivering now is called Study Document Assistant. So you take that 300-page protocol, let AI ingest it, and then allow doctors, nurses, and everyone to ask questions about the protocol because they might want to know what's the eligibility criteria for this protocol, right? But one of the challenges there was like that's an easy problem to solve with sort of ChatGPT kind of technology. But we had to figure out they were afraid of the answers that the AI might give, right? Because it might be making stuff up. So instead, we use it more as like an indexer. So it'll take you to the place in the protocol that answers that question rather than trying to answer it itself. But in trying to deliver that, it's not just PDFs and PowerPoints. They have to handle all sorts of documents in different formats. So there's a whole document pipeline processing that we had to set up before we actually gave it to ChatGPT so that we could get direct links into whatever that type of document was.
Gotcha. Making sure that trust is there with the AI is certainly important.
Yeah, exactly.
As a guy who's been involved in multiple companies at different stages that have had exits, and I saw last year your company completed its Series C funding, which especially last year, that was a tough year funding. So that absolutely says you guys have something great because short of that, it wouldn't have gotten funded last year based on how the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
From an engineering leader perspective, how have you seen you need to manage different, maybe from pre-seed routes to series A, B, and C?
Yeah. So for me, it's always been like, what's the minimum head count and you can get by with at a particular stage, right? Okay. And in the early stages, you're looking for jacks of all trades because you're trying to deal with like, I have a 3 head count now, and we still have to get 12 different things done: DevOps, design, UX, all that stuff. So, and then as you scale, you can get more specialized, right? So when we hit, 12 people, maybe we've hired our first Scrum Master, right? Okay. And then when we hit 15, we hired our first dedicated QA person. And then I don't remember the exact order, I'm making this up, but that's what happened, right? Now we have a full-time designer, full-time product, head of product. And you get more specialized, and that's what increases the velocity and quality, right, that you do. Because when you have a full-time designer, that's all they do, and they're really good at it. Until you get there, you're dealing with like whatever you can do on a napkin, and that's what works.
So sometimes I like to joke, you do it long enough, wrong enough, and you figure out how to do it right. And I have found when you don't have a designer laying out frameworks and what needs to be done prior to the developers doing it, that you're kind of doing things backwards.
Oh, exactly. Yep.
Certainly one of the lessons learned I've had here, to say the least. Well, tell us about your current engineering team. How many engineers do you have? How are you guys structured?
Yep. Yeah. So we've got two agile teams, basically. And we still do I believe in full stack developers, but we still carve it up. So we have, each team has 2 back-end developers and 2 front-end developers for redundancy. Our stack is Golang for the back-end, React up front, and then we have that head of product in there. And basically I do DevOps, and then we have another full-time, basically full-time consultant that does DevOps. So we're still a little thin on DevOps. And then we have a designer that does the upfront mocks in Figma with our head of product. And we run regular Agile. So 2-week sprints. We release pretty much on each sprint, or at least once a month is where we're running right now.
Now, is your team, are you guys in office, hybrid, fully remote?
Oh, no, yeah, we have no physical locations.
Okay, so fully remote.
Which actually helps on compliance and stuff, because we can claim we don't have any physical stuff.
Well, and with HIPAA compliance, and I remember it's interesting because pre-pandemic, HIPAA, it was challenging to work from home or have teams working from home with the HIPAA requirements you need to meet, because if they were in office, they had to be behind locked doors and separated from other teams. And so I think the pandemic, and it was good to see how the HIPAA regulations and the business associate agreement evolved with that. So I think
totally.
Good point.
When I was CTO at Health Market Science, I led the transition to make it HIPAA. And it meant doing physical things like installing video cameras and locks on doors and everything. It was a nightmare.
So fully remote team. And so it sounds like you still have kind of some hands-on keyboard. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I love that. Yeah. So even when I was at Monetate, I mean, our team got to maybe 70 engineers. I still like to code sometimes.
And everybody has a different opinion on this. I have found the best CTOs are still hands-on engineers, even if it's not on the company product. Like they're doing stuff at nights and weekends to try different things out to make sure they truly know how to lead engineers. I mean, let's face it, with the use of AI, how languages and frameworks are changing, it's hard to stay on top of that, especially if you're not hands-on keyboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think a lot of good entrepreneurs like always want to have, side projects going just to keep their hands dirty. My wife's actually got a company she's doing right now.
Maybe my CTOs always tell me that they have to keep their skills sharp outside of it. And maybe that's just another way for saying I have side projects.
Right, exactly.
Regardless, I do feel you can't be too far removed to be an effective engineering leader.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
Now, so you mentioned your tech stack. So you guys are on Google Cloud?
Yep. All Google Cloud. Like I've done AWS most in the past, but we made the switch when we started getting into Kubernetes. So I guess 2 companies ago, or everybody started getting the Kubernetes craze, and GCP was just much easier. GKE is nice. So that's what got me over to GCP. But honestly, what we did over the last 12 months is we ripped Kubernetes out entirely. So we are no longer even on Kubernetes. We are entirely serverless. So we run on Cloud Run, and the cost is higher, but we definitely save on headache and complexity.
Interesting.
That's why I can get away. That's why I think I got away with not having like a full-time DevOps squad.
Okay. That was certainly a big and bold move. Have you found it more challenging? I don't see a lot of companies in the healthcare and life sciences space on Google Cloud. There's nothing wrong with it, but sometimes it could be a little harder to get skilled engineers. Everybody knows AWS and Azure, and most know Google Cloud, but maybe aren't experts on it. What's been your experience?
Yeah, so I'd say, a lot of the day-to-day is the same, especially for developers and stuff, because in the end, we use Docker and produce images. It's just, how does that image get out to the internet and run? So, and using Cloud Run, and we use Terraform or Tofu, so to control the cloud. So, in using Tofu and Cloud Run, it's a small amount of code to take this image that's produced and get it out to the cloud and make sure it's running. But we do, especially in the pharma world, run into the pharma world trust Azure and AWS, and GCP is the new kid on the block for the pharma companies. So where if I was running on AWS or Azure, I'd get an immediate pass. I have to go through kind of like a mini due diligence with every new client that we have. They audit our architectures and stuff. And every time I put the Google GCP slide up, they're like, oh, can you talk to us about this? Right, rather than just rubber stamping.
I'd imagine you always pass. If anything, though, they're trying to find people on their side who can verify what you're doing.
Right, exactly. That's it. Yeah, and we actually have to go through real audits. I mean, so They're 3-day audits. They're not in person, but they are on the screen over Zoom, and they go through everything. So we've been able to pass each time. So we're 8 for 8 on client audits.
There you go. There you go. So as a CTO in the healthcare space, what's the biggest challenge you're facing now?
So what we're doing, some of this is, especially as a startup in the healthcare space, we move fast, like way faster than our clients can keep up with, right? So, they are expecting a release each quarter. When we tell them that we might release every 2 weeks and that there's going to be that amount of change, they don't know how to deal with it. But we need to release that because we want to keep our increments small, right? And we want to release rapid new features for our clients. So that's been literally the hardest challenge, sort of dragging pharma along with us as we crank these features and functionality up.
Gotcha. And, compliance is always a pain, but it is what it is in the healthcare space. You got to jump through the hoops.
Yep, exactly.
And you got to get through the audits, but that's kind of table stakes for the industry, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's actually one of our differentiators. We've been able to figure out how to pair that with regular Agile, right? So we use all the normal tools, we use Jira and GitHub and everything, and we've sort of wrapped all of that in paperwork and policies and procedures that allows us to still function like a fast Agile team.
Okay, excellent. All right, so on a different note, what's one key trait you look for when hiring new engineering talent on your team?
Oh, that's a great question. It's not maybe 2 traits. So I'm always looking for high aptitude, right? So, a lot of people are giving tests and stuff like that. I don't care if you know a language at all or the nuances of a language, but the ability to pick something up, run with it, and grow in and of yourself. And a lot of that comes with passion, right? That's where the growth comes from. You really love this stuff. So that's what I look for. You do have a side project and your GitHub history involves other stuff, and you try little things, and you can tell me about some time where you tried something just on your own, because that's where all the growth and high aptitude comes from.
It's definitely getting challenging. There's some pretty smart tools coming out to assist engineers with code tests, whether they're live or take-home type stuff. It's getting more and more creative, and so it makes it harder to trust a pure test.
We had a candidate come through, and we were going back and forth over email, and there's 3 of us on the thread. We thought this person was AI. Just the email replies coming through, they're answering too perfectly. This is not right. Smelled funny.
I have a client who they do panel interviews for engineers, and they always have one person on ChatGPT that will put in the questions to see if the candidate's response is the exact same.
That's funny. It's
a
good idea.
A little deeper and certainly verify technology, but understand how they approach problems, how they go about things. Yes. So in running a clinical platform company, what would you say is a big challenge that's maybe not so obvious to people who aren't in your industry?
Honestly, it's not too different from what I've done in other industries or other parts of health tech. When you compare it to working with big enterprises, right? Every one of these, so our platform, right, if you think about the different end users, we have the pharmaceutical company, right, is logging in and doing stuff. And that's a BI platform, right? Okay. We actually run a Metabase on top of BigQuery for that side of the business. But then you have all the way down to end users, that are patients, and these UIs have to look entirely different, because this one has to look like an enterprise platform that a pharmaceutical company would need to expect. And then the patients are probably on their mobile phone, so it's a responsive design, big buttons. So and then the sites are kind of in between. They're probably on a workstation someplace, right? So to accommodate those different experiences, because these people have different expectations as a user, is really hard. So that's why we have our designer. He's amazing.
I was going to say, you
sort of figured all that out.
Phenomenal product teams to make sure they understand the unique journeys of each of your users, because they are quite different.
Yeah, exactly. And even the data model underneath of all that, and the permission systems, because the pharmaceutical company can't see any of the PII, right? So you have to have hard rules there, because it has to be a blinded trial. Right. So we have data models and permissions in place to sort of make sure that all is taken care of, and you don't cross streams.
Sounds like an amazing platform. As an experienced CTO, what's one brutal lesson you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
Let's see. This is going to sound weird, but
this is uncensored.
I was one of those young hotshots that thought I had all the answers and had sort of bought into all the dogma. So, back in my 20s, I had the hubris. I knew the right answer. Microservices was it, right? I wish, and I eventually learned to just sit back and listen to everybody else, right? Instead of just always asserting the right answer all the time. So, that was a hard-earned lesson, right? But now, once you're able to do that, you do get a better solution when you can listen to everybody else.
Getting knocked around and having some losses to, good, young, eager, very brilliant engineers. Sometimes to make that tradition from a brilliant engineer to a CTO takes some grooming there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to. Yeah, I was an asshole back in my 20s. I recognize that. So,
well, and what would you say is your secret sauce for taking a business plan or a product plan and making it into scalable software?
Yeah, so like I said, it's assembling the right team, absolutely, right? But in the beginning, when you can't get all those specialized experts to do it, and you can't build the end product, right? It's that MVP. It's figuring out like what is the minimum I need to do here to get live, get money coming in the door, all of that stuff. And I think I've been around and got knocked around to realize that you just got to as simple as possible in the beginning, and then layer on.
I wish there was a better way to learn than from your losses.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what my whole next book is about, is how much you don't learn as much from your wins as you do your losses.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. Like, yeah, when I back in the boom of the internet, the first company I joined out in California, they IPO'd 6 weeks after I got there, and everybody's millionaires.
Nice.
So I realized, and I thought I had learned a lot over that time, and I learned nothing because back then everything just came so easy.
Right place,
right. It wasn't
time.
actually yeah, exactly. It wasn't a recipe for success at that one. It was just luck.
Brian, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. I'm really excited to see how you shape the next chapter of Proof Pilot and tech leadership at large. Any final shout outs or advice you want to give for tech leaders navigating change?
No, I mean, just maybe shout out to a couple of my crew, John Aldinger, Ryan McKnight, and Greg. They've been with me for, like I said, multiple companies now. And it is finding that team. We have fun every day together. Right, it's that right dynamic. We're able to challenge each other. Once you find that dynamic, it's just a pleasure.
You know what? If you can't surround yourself with great people that you enjoy, work hard, have fun, then why do what we do?
Exactly.
To say the least. So I think that's great advice. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin, CEO, author, and builder of 30 ventures with one secret weapon: custom software. Through my company Sonatify, I help tech leaders scale with elite nearshore engineers. If this episode sparks something, share it, subscribe, pass it along. And just remember, the best leaders don't wait, they build. Thanks, everybody.